I started blogging late 2004, and 2005 was when I sort of did it seriously. And I think it would have been about 6 months into it that I decided on a whim, more than anything, to have a go at podcasting. I just recently purchased an MP3 player. It was called an iRiver at the time. It was more a competitor to the iPod, but I really liked it, and it had a little microphone jack on it. And I just wanted to see what it was like to sort of sit in front of it and talk and see if I could create an audio file and to stick it up on the website and see how it went. And you'll like this other second reason, given what you've done for a career, is I had a university lecturer once who told me that I had a voice he really enjoyed listening to and I should be on the radio. So it was sort of my attempt at getting on the radio in the sense that I could have a podcast as well. So,
and how did that work out for you, Yaro? What radio station are you on?
Well, I never actually pursued the radio career so much. Obviously continued with the podcasting. I've been on the odd American guest show here and there, but yeah.
I think if you actually could see my wage packet, I think you've made the right choice, staying with what you're doing at the moment. What is it about podcasting that you love? I mean, you've been doing it now for quite some time. What is it that keeps you energized about podcasting?
Well, there's many reasons. The big reason is clearly that the audience loves it. That's an obvious thing. I've been always impressed by how much people enjoy interviews, in particular, like we're doing now, obviously. The idea that people can share them, they can easily just forward it to a friend. It's not something that's hard to consume, like taking it with you in the car, on your iPod or whatever it is you've got to play with. The best thing about it, though, personally, I've noticed in terms of a marketing tool is how strong a connection it enables you to have with your audience, because of the personal aspect of it with your voice. Obviously, video, I guess, takes it to the next level, and I'm a proponent of video as well. But I actually listen to a lot more audios than I watch videos, and that would be partially because that's my learning style, just the way I prefer to learn. But I also find audio easier to consume on the run. So I catch a bus, catch a train, in my car, driving to the beach, whatever it is, I will take a podcast with me or some sort of educational content on audio. So I think that's why podcasting has been an effective marketing and brand building and engagement tool for me. Also, it's just a quick way to create content. It really is something you can do in half an hour. Then you upload it to your server and pretty much you're done. So it's for some people that's easier than writing. I personally enjoy writing, so I don't mind doing both. But it's nice to have multiple forms of media, and if you have your podcast transcribed, you've got the written content as well. So it is quite effective at creating all kinds of content. And I should mention one more thing that's been very effective, especially early on for me, was the power of podcast interviews to introduce me to some well-known people in my industry, good connections, good marketing for me to get promoters and affiliates for my products later on, and just meeting people. Like the fact that I know Tim Ferriss is purely because of my podcast, and he knows a lot of people. So there's a lot of 1 or 2 degrees of separation between me and a lot of very well-known people in the world. So if I ever feel like I want to tap them on the shoulder, I have people I can go to potentially get in touch with them, and that's definitely as a result of podcasting.
So a great networking tool as well. Would you say, Yaro, that the majority of very successful internet marketers or bloggers would have a podcast, or if they don't, should certainly look at having one? I
always recommend it. I don't think they all have one. It's not everyone's forte. Not everyone has a magical voice that they like yourself. They don't have the comfort, I guess. They haven't broken down the fear barrier. Technically, there's still an issue. If you're thinking about it, text is probably the easiest to publish online, followed by audio and then video in terms of production and publishing. And just the fact that they do have to put more of themselves out there is something that does scare a lot of people, and they can sit behind their computer and type articles and be relatively safe sort of thing. So no, not everyone does it, but I definitely it helps everyone. I've never seen a podcast hurt a website. So unless you're saying some dodgy things on your podcast.
I don't think that'd get through the iTunes gates, to be honest, if it was. You made a very interesting point, Yaro, about how portable podcasts can be. You literally can, if you're gym junkies like ourselves, you could take your iPod or iPhone down to the gym and jump on the treadmill, which I do every single morning, and listen to different podcasts from all around the world. Where is a place that you have listened to a podcast which some people might find surprising?
So I'd probably say in the bathroom. I'm fairly tame with my podcast consumption. I definitely the most it'd be the car. I have combined it with like you exercising. It's a bit weird. Sometimes I actually will be watching a DVD of exercising instruction at the same time as actually listening to an interview off the computer.
Wow.
As a man, it's hard to, multitask and focus and do things at once. So
Yes.
that can be challenging, but I've managed to do that. I'm even doing the dishes. For me, that's one of the best times to listen to a podcast or music.
The problem is you shouldn't actually be doing the dishes, Yaro. I mean, that's the issue there. You should be focusing on your podcast.
I should, but this is consumption, not production. So, it's passive and it's a lovely way to get two outcomes from one piece of time, which is what I think is the best thing about podcasting, because I can't read and do the dishes at the same time. So.
Well, you can't. Well, who would want to, really? I'd just rather read than just doing the dishes. So let's talk about some of the benefits that you have seen directly from your blog, Entrepreneur's Journey, as a result of producing a podcast.
The first thing that I noticed, this is back in the early days when I produced audio, I didn't actually interview anyone. I just basically sat there and riffed and rambled about certain subjects. And that was the first time a lot of people heard my voice, and that created that connection that I was talking about. So I definitely think that created a level of engagement that I definitely didn't have yet with certain people. Certain people wouldn't even listen to it, but those people who like audio would have downloaded those files and became connected to my personality on a level that they wouldn't have done with my my written content. It's the first thing. But once I did start to interview people, the connections I made early on were actually interesting, because there were people like Brian Clark and Darren Rouse, Daniel Skoko, I think. I don't know if I interviewed him, but there were a lot of bloggers who were in my industry, and internet marketers too, of course, and a lot of them were just sort of growing up at the same time with their blogs as I was growing up with my blog. So we were kind of contemporaries or peers. It's safe to say that nowadays it would be harder to interview them and then convince them to potentially down the line look at your product in the hope of promoting it, simply because of the sheer volume of content going at them. The best thing, though, still, I believe, to do if you want to get a potential joint venture partner on board, or at least open the door to it, is the podcast. So in my case, Darren and Brian in particular were two people I interviewed and got to know on a closer level because of that. And they both eventually promoted Blog Mastermind, my first product, and it just opened the door to anything. Yeah. Like we met in person later on at some events, and we've had some form of ongoing relationship. Now, you can have that from just creating a website with profile, but there's nothing that beats the intimacy of what we're doing right now, having that face-to-face or at least voice-to-voice connection. And that really is it's a bonding process. So, certain people who are well and truly super famous, like you interview a Seth Godin nowadays, is not going to guarantee that he's going to even look at whatever you email him after the fact. But certainly within your peer group and your industry, I'd be interviewing everyone, because it is your peer group that kind of gives you the support as you're growing up, or whatever you're trying to do online with your website or your podcast or both, especially if you plan to sell a product where you need some kind of support, or even just a link to an article or a podcast. So, when I interviewed Brian, he immediately linked to his the interview afterwards. When I interviewed Darren, same thing. So very often, especially if you do an interview that they really enjoy, practice your interviewing techniques for podcasting, they're more inclined to want to share it with their people. Especially, even those people who do maybe 10 interviews a month, if yours is one that in particular touched on some subjects and they felt really engaged with, they will share that one. And actually, that's what happened with me and Jeremy Shoemaker, Shoe Money. He did an interview with me, which was, for me, one of the easy interviews ever. I asked him one question at the beginning: tell me your life story. And he rambled, because, I don't know, maybe I caught him in the right mood. He's definitely a kind of guy who will share and ramble with you quite easily. But he went to places that I think were very conclusive, in the sense it was a comprehensive interview. Took his life story and really put it out there. So he linked to it in several places after that, because he just wanted to share it with his audience. So that was a benefit to my own side, of course, as well. And it just came about because of that interview on a podcast.
So Yaro, when you started podcasting, were there any things that you had to get over? Were there any fears or any concerns about sitting behind a microphone that you really struggled with?
Like everyone, I had the same issue with hearing my own voice on audio afterwards, going, that's not me, and do I really sound like that? And I have horrible memories. When I was, all males go through, when you're 13 or 14, you go through your voice breaking. And I had a very prolonged period of my voice breaking, so there'd often be that, hi kind of effect happening because of that. And they do horrible things to you when you're in high school. Oral presentations scared the crap out of me, let's put it that way. So to do that with the voice breaking, and that sort of public speaking fear carried through, and I avoided any kind of oral presentation of anything throughout university as well. I'd pick up the course guides before I chose subjects so I could see what the assessments were like. And if it had the word oral in any of the assessment pieces, it was crossed off my list.